one of the biggest threads throughout this entire day has been AI. A lot of us have been talking about it as how it impacts the marketing workflow and the business cycle. But now we're going to bring up Taz Petel from Perplexity and really talk about it from a consumer usage standpoint, how they're using AI and how ads is being incorporated in. Taz, come on up. Thanks, sir. Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us. Excited to chat here. You know, obviously, tons of excitement around AI. I think, you know, obviously a lot of business opportunities here, but I think personally, and I imagine everyone here is also using it on a personal level, starting to search with it, starting to spend time with it, play with it. And, you know, classic sort of Silicon Valley ethos is ads suck and consumers hate them. So I guess my first question is, why? I mean, you guys, to your credit, you know, leaned in towards ads earlier than most. It's almost, you know, if you look at the CTV ecosystem, right, we went through a long period of subscription. Lo and behold, they all have ads now. You guys have done that much faster. Maybe it's AI speed, right? You're moving faster. But maybe just first talk us through how you guys think about ads, because this is obviously a very new user experience, and you're bringing ads into it, you know, relatively quickly.
Yeah. So ads within Perplexity is in its early sort of stages. It's very much product driven. We really look at user behaviors to understand if and when to even serve an ad. And for those that may not be familiar with the current ad iteration, you ask a question in Perplexity, you get an answer that is not influenced or augmented in any way by a potential advertiser. And then below the answer, you have a sponsor-related question. And this is an area where you feel comfortable introducing ads for users because it's a natural flow. You ask a question, you might answer. We actually have this thing within that section that we dynamically, using AI, will be like, what are the next possible questions you could ask? And we felt that was a native place to have an ad that you click on, but when you click on it, it answers the question within Perplexity. So the traditional sort of link out to a landing page or a PDP page to transact and purchase something does not currently exist in its current iteration and format. Because the users expect to stay within Perplexity. You start with some sort of inspiration, you discover a product or a service, you're maybe doing your finals right now and you're doing research, you might find a product that you start comparing within Perplexity, and then based on our classifiers, we may show you the answers that lead you into a potential product that might be relevant, and you might be ready to transact. So the ad today is a sponsor-related question, but we are thinking about beyond the impression. I think when we think about impressions, and Google and Amazon have that scale, and we're not trying to say like we have this programmatic or bidding ad system. We're trying to redefine this and do it from scratch. We really believe there's a chance here to reformat how people interact with advertising and make it very additive to the experience, like naturally in the word itself. So it could be not impressions, but it could be more integrations, right? And so we're thinking at a product level what that looks like, and V1 is a nice way for us to introduce that to our very loyal user base that's continuing to grow.
Got it. So yeah, so we're obviously not doing blue links. I mean, you can click off Perplexity, but it's not what's being monetized today. Maybe let's talk through that sort of format and the user experience. I know personally, and I don't know what the stats are on this, but it is very different than search as the way we typically think about it. I know you guys say it's not a search engine, it's an answers engine. But answers are often not finite, right? You sort of ask a question, and then there's another question that follows. Can you just talk about how consumers are using Perplexity today? Is that just me? Is that the common use case and maybe that flow?
Yeah, and I'll take a step back, sort of providing context on like how Perplexity is sort of, as from a business model and how users use it, are sort of two parts of it. Perplexity is available across iOS, Android, desktop, mobile. You can swap out and add it as your default search bar in Chrome or any other toolbars. And when you ask a question, it's free, just like any other consumer app. However, our power users, which are for Perplexity Pro, they pay $20 a month to get an enhanced version of Perplexity Pro. These are our folks that are asking hundreds of questions a day, a month, thousands a month. And those are the power users that tend to ask, 13 plus words per question. Yep. Then we also have a Perplexity Pro enterprise level grade. So that is, you can consider in the realms of Copilot or ChatGPT for enterprise. And so we've got these 3 layers: free, prosumer, and then enterprise. And each use case is very different. Like my mother-in-law in Omaha, Nebraska, she's using the free because it does the job, right? And her questions are more like consumer focused, and she's using it to compare things. The pro users are like asking it to code something or compare something on GitHub and going really deep. Or a finance analyst at a bank is comparing public equities compared to the IRR they might get in a private equity placement. All these things, and the answers are very different. Because we have 13 plus words per question, that's 13 sort of words we can use to synthesize an answer to better serve that user. So everything we do is to better serve that user, and that data helps us at that query level to provide a really rich experience. When you ask a question in Perplexity, very long question, you might get a long answer. So when you scroll down the answer, it could be like 13-second scroll. So if you have an ad, you kind of got to get there, right? So that's why we're thinking about integration versus just impressions, because that's not something that we feel every user is going to benefit from. And so that's the thing: longer questions, better answers, and the answers are dynamic. So when you ask a question, the private equity versus public equities, you'll get a chart that'll be a visualization. If you're comparing shoes for your kids for basketball camp, we'll show different shoes, and that comes out in a table, right? And also dynamically understand, based on your question, how to best serve that answer. And I think users are appreciating that. And once they discover that's possible, they come back more. But we don't have an established user base as some of our traditional partners do out there.
Yeah, you're growing it. Right?
We're growing it, yeah.
Growing leaps and bounds. You currently, for sure. Integration is an interesting point here because your title is not head of advertising. It is head of advertising and shopping, right? So clearly, you guys are thinking about integrating that user experience, that flow, not just at the ads level, but actually the shopping level as well. We talked today about the outcomes era. I think in almost every conversation it was about, and even just Krishan, full funnel. How are we connecting ads to outcomes, which in most cases the goal is shopping or commerce in some form. How have you guys made that transition? How are you thinking about, I guess, integrating those two things together?
Well, I didn't know when I got the job that I would be doing that. So that's,
there you go.
we're moving fast. So over the last 6 months, which is like a lifetime at Perplexity, in the last couple months we realized that the team that was focused on commerce and everything from the classifiers that prompt an organic visual that is really helpful for a buyer potentially, to the payments level and the transaction, working with processors and all the way through to shipping and arriving, was a very sort of separated muscle for us. And then over time, advertisers that happen to be merchants were speaking with our group and our team, and they were like, wait a second, there's some overlap here. We ended up passing calls and following up with the other team, and eventually we felt that with this integrated idea that they sort of go hand in hand. And shopping is very different for someone trying to sell a car versus a CPG brand or an eBay or an Amazon or an Etsy, right? So we are trying to build for all these different use cases, and I think that we have great user behavior intent. To give you an idea, when we first launched shopping as a user experience, and so for those, what I mentioned earlier is Perplexity Pro. If you're a pro user, we have your information that enables us to do one-click shopping. So your payments information, your shipping address. So if you see a product that we organically feel is relevant for you, irrespective of if they're an advertiser or not, which they're separate, and you want to buy it, you may find that there's a Buy with Pro button on there. So that's a natural way to save people time. So we introduced that in Black Friday of last year, and we've seen, since Black Friday of last year through last month, I haven't pulled the data from this month, 5x increase in shopper classifiers. So people learned that you could buy in Pro, and now all of a sudden, they're buying more, right? So we're seeing that increase each day, which is exciting. And in some cases, those merchants or shoppers might also become advertisers.
Yep. I noticed too that it's not commerce, right? It's shopping. There's an experience there because the talk of agentic and how it'll take over. That sort of removes the consumer from the equation, at least of the task. And certainly there are tasks you want to get rid of. But people also enjoy shopping. We have to, if we get all our answers and get sped up with AI, we still need to spend our time somewhere. And it seems like you guys are, it's not just about giving them the answer and that's it. It's how do you spend time sort of thinking through that, and whether that is shopping related or not, keeping them on the platform. I want to shift gears to the marketer for a second. And this isn't just about advertising, but I think marketers in general, as they look at chat-related interfaces with consumers, this move from search where you were getting links and pushing to the website to answers. It's a very scary proposition because they don't control the experience on Google per se, but they get the click and then they control the experience there. You just talked about keeping people on your platform more. How are marketers engaging with you to make sure their brand is being represented the right way, whether it's organic or paid, in general with your consumers?
Great question. So our thesis is that people want to be able to take action, and we provide the answers that enable them to take action. And we hope and think that action can take place on Perplexity. Our business model is not the sort of traditional toll booth business where you got to pay to go, right? And so that may be controversial in terms of how we're thinking about it, but I think if we provide the right answer and it is uninfluenced by advertisers, it doesn't matter where you rank on it, but the synthesis of that answer provides value, people will take action on Perplexity. And it's a challenge, right? If you think about a brand that's used to seeing traffic or dependent on that traffic, or you see a merchant that is being able to manage their logins and provide points and things like that, how do we integrate that in a native way? And those are some fun challenges that we have ahead of us. But that's our thesis, and I think we're going to continue to build for it. And I think being a product-first company, I think it's exciting to see what our team is looking at, all the way for that experience from discovery all the way to action. And I think we'll continue to build on it. But it's going to take some time, because not everybody is doing that. I still am like a value shopper, and I like to compare things, and then I'm like, yeah, it might be free shipping, but maybe I'll get it cheaper later on when it's on sale, or Gap always has a sale or something like that. I'll be thinking I don't need to buy right now or whatever. And those type of things, you may not capture that user currently within Perplexity. I think that it's a blended approach for how we're taking it. And native is going to be very important to us in terms of how we think about that.
Yep. And then I guess even taking that step further for how the navigation works, right? If you're getting answers and you're staying here, this is not like search where it's also the navigation engine for lots of the open web and publishers and the rest. This is different than that. That said, you guys have also been trying to enable answers elsewhere, right? You do not have to be on Perplexity to leverage Perplexity. You've started opening up your API. Can you talk about the strategy there and how does that play into the ad side of things and the shopping side of things within Perplexity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very exciting part of our business. So the Pro and the Enterprise business was our initial revenue generator. And earlier this year, we introduced our API, which essentially enables a publisher, a developer, a tinkerer, anybody thinking about building something to leverage natural language search within an app or any experience and provide the answers that we feel can power that. So you can build that and do that right now. It's self-serve, and that's our fastest growing business.
And is that using that app's data, or is that using your data and it's what you would get on Perplexity just on a different surface?
That's it. I mean, at sort of face value, if you were to use it in its sort of its entity as is, it's called Sonar. It's the same exact experience you get on Perplexity and off. However, you can imagine different partners have different parameters. And so they may want to be, if you're a merchant and you're potentially using Perplexity's API to power natural language search inside of your SKUs of thousands of products, you may not want it to include your competitors' products there, right? So you can create parameters that enable you to have at least a sandbox of areas, but still leverage what we're doing from a power of our search, irrespective of the old ways of sort of semantic or keywords and terms necessarily, where you're taking those 13 words all into account. And so that's really exciting, and that's a really fast-growing self-serve part of our business. And excited to see what people build there. And we're supporting that, and then ads obviously is another layer, and then we have our browser coming out later this year.
Got it. Yeah, so the browser was something I wanted to touch on as well. Your CEO was on some podcasts recently talking about that. In fact, I think the thing that really got sent around was that you guys would track people via the browser and be able to use that to make the experience better. In the world of cookies and data deprecation, that seems like the opposite of where things are going. And yet, with AI, the use of data is so important to bring value to consumers. Can you talk about how you guys think about that? I mean, is the notion of privacy dead? Do we not need to worry about it? How should we think about that within the Perplexity browser?
Yeah, I think the browser and sort of the quotes they may have had in prior are sort of two separate things, two separate threads. The browser is meant to be agentic, right? So the idea is how do you ask a question and take action? And you really can only achieve that when you're in a browser versus app to app. So I think the way we think about personalization is something that we haven't even gotten to yet, right? So personalization on Perplexity is still evolving. Today, everything we do at Perplexity is at the query level. So we serve you, it's not taking into account what you did before or you might do afterward. And the browser is going to operate in a similar way that we do within Perplexity, irrespective of where you're actually making that query. So no, we take privacy serious. We don't train on any private data or public data and models like that. Perplexity is an application layer. Yep. And we sit on top of actually many of the LLMs. So depending on your query, we may call one of the LLMs for a query that might be better served if it's more research focused, or maybe it's more image based and we feel one LLM's image sort of generation is stronger than the other. And so in real time, we call that. So for users, we want to get them the best experience, and whether it's in a browser, a mobile app, but we have a partnership with Motorola where we're going to have Perplexity pre-installed in the Motorola phone. Deutsche Telekom is launching their own physical phone where Perplexity will be the AI native agentic modality within Magenta, their phone coming out this fall in Europe. So we're trying to be everywhere. And so the browser's merely just one avenue for that.
Yeah, I've heard phone integrations can be powerful for search and answer engines in the past. Last question here. So you guys obviously have a big subscription business, as you talked about, both sort of consumer and pro enterprise, which is the vast majority of the economics or the monetization of the business today. You've started moving into ads. Let's look 5 years out, which is an absolute lifetime in the age of AI. But 5 years out, is ads the majority of the business for Perplexity? What do you think?
It's very possible. I mean, I think as our user base continues to grow, you got to think about audiences, and I think the big difference is we're going to have it much more integrated and a much more native experience in what ads might look like. So it can definitely be a large portion of our business, but I still see our subscriptions growing and the API growing, where those things sort of from like a lift perspective are much more lightweight. I would say, enterprise cycles are longer, but more users, more queries. A lot of businesses, I think the saying is, and we're all here, every business is an ad business to some degree. So it'll be an important part of our business for sure. But I think it'll look very different than maybe how the traditional partners have monetized to date. And we're excited about that.
Very exciting. Well, thank you so much. Taz Petel, everyone.
Thank you.